Hey everyone, this is Young, MSU Venue Director and the Interim Real-Time Venue Director. Just want to say happy Wednesday. We've finally been getting a good stretch of sunny days that aren't super hot here in Michigan. So we're in that time of the summer and it's great. But you know, despite everything being great, at least here, weather-wise, this past week was also just a troubling week, at least for me, as I just keep looking at the news and talks about like the second wave of coronavirus, and as you know, there was news that broke out in Atlanta about another unarmed black man being shot and dying. I think his name was Rashad Brooks, and there's just a lot going on in our world. And as I was listening to Pastor Noel's sermon from this past Sunday, there was a passage in there that I just want to talk about for our time today, as a reminder for us all on where we need to begin our pushing back of, that was really bad grammar, of just pushing back against the enemy, pushing back against just injustice that we see in the world, pushing back against any fear that we might have of COVID, and it starts with prayer. And I just want to read here one verse that Peter writes in 1 Peter 4, verse 7. He writes this: "The end of all things is near, therefore be alert and sober-minded for prayer." All right? He says, be alert and sober-minded for prayer. Peter writes this when the persecuted church, when the Jewish Christians are getting persecuted by the Roman Empire, by Emperor Nero, right? So they're suffering. Their world is not a place that you want to live in at that moment. And what does he tell them to do? He says to be alert. Right? He says, be aware of your surroundings, be alert, be on guard, know what's going on. And then he says, be sober-minded, think with clarity. Don't let all these other ideologies or your feelings, get in the way of thinking clearly. But for what reason? For prayer. And this idea of prayer has really been stirring up in my heart, convicting me the past week or 2 weeks. It reminds me of this Corrie ten Boom quote. Corrie ten Boom, you can look her up. She is, I believe, a Holocaust survivor, or she lived through the Holocaust during World War II. And she has this quote that I think has just very different iterations. But essentially, it's a question that she asks, and it's this. It's, do you treat prayer as the spare tire of your car or the engine that drives your car? And that convicted me a lot as I've come face to face with that quote, and I've realized, man, I treat prayer like the spare tire of my car, and it's been like that for the past couple of years. As Peter writes here, and as Corrie ten Boom, quotes, how do you view prayer in your life? Especially when we see this world flipped upside down with a pandemic that is still taking names, and it's not going to stop, at least until we have a vaccine. How do you turn to prayer? Do you turn to prayer when we see injustice like sweeping across our nation, where we see marginalized communities suffering from injustice, when we see black men and women dying unjustly? Do we turn to prayer? And, I want to elaborate on that a little bit, because I don't mean like, do you just turn to prayer and then just, say, did my thing, I was pushing back? Or is prayer the beginning of the action that you take? A lot of people in our world today will say that prayer is the most inactive thing that you can do. It's just passive. And I don't see that here. I don't see that in this passage that Peter is writing. because, I mean, we read here in verse 7 to be sober-minded and alert for prayer. And then when you keep reading verses 8 through 11, he just continues in these different action steps, being hospitable. What's it called? He says, be stewards of the varied grace of God. If anyone speaks, let it be as one who speaks God's word. If anyone serves, let it be from the strength that God provides. And you see the kind of the theme of this passage doesn't go from passive action, like prayer, to tangible action, right? So to more present action. This whole thing is chock full of just things you can do, practical things you can do, action steps that you can take, being fueled by the grace of God and by His strength, and that includes prayer. And that actually probably is the best place for us to start, because what that does is that makes us come correct with our heart posture before the Lord, and it says, before I do anything in my own strength, I'm going to lean on the Lord. And actually, Peter even says, don't do anything on your own strength. Do it from strength fueled by God. But before you do anything like that, come through with prayer first. And that is such an important thing for us to realize. As we see a pandemic still raging on in our world, as we see injustice happening in our Black communities, in our nation, pray. Pray. Like Pastor Noel said, whether it's just in that moment, just for a few seconds, a few minutes, or you want to pray and fast, for the next 3 days, or 40-day prayer and fast for this, whatever prayer burden the Lord puts on your heart, pray through that, and ask the Lord to step in and to intervene, and also from that posture, move into tangible action steps, to push back against injustices that we see here in our nation, pushing back, or at least coming to the aid of our healthcare workers as they push back against COVID-19, and any other issues that may be happening in your life. It needs to start with prayer and then to move into tangible action. So just want to encourage you with those words today. Hope you guys have a great Wednesday and a great rest of your week, and enjoy the weather. Peace.